I was knee-deep in troubleshooting the ERP integration that had been limping along since 2018 when Richard Hoffman appeared in my doorway, all cologne and smug confidence, and said, "Hey Matthew, quick heads up. Jessica starts Monday. She'll need your office." No hello, no warning, just dropped it on me like a wrench to the skull. I'm Matthew Davidson, 48 years old, and I'd been keeping Midsteel Manufacturing's systems running for 13 years. No sick days, no drama, just solid engineering work, and the kind of reliability you don't find in a manual but absolutely need when your entire operation depends on legacy systems held together with custom code and determination. And now Jessica, his 24-year-old daughter with a social media marketing degree and an Instagram full of motivational quotes, was going to nest in my corner office and probably hang fairy lights over the production monitoring screens. I stared at him, wrench still in hand, brain short-circuiting from the absurdity. Jessica had once asked me if our manufacturing system had a reset button for real life. During last year's holiday party, she'd spent 20 minutes explaining to the engineering team how we could optimize our brand synergy by posting more behind-the-scenes content. The engineers had looked at me like I should translate, but honestly, I'd been just as lost. Now she was going to manage operations from my desk like it was some kind of LinkedIn photo shoot. I smiled. Of course. That's all I said. Of course. And I meant it with the same tone you'd use for funeral arrangements. He didn't notice, just nodded like I'd done him a favor and walked off to practice his next board presentation or whatever corporate theater he was rehearsing. Richard had always been better at talking about manufacturing than actually understanding it. He'd inherited Midsteel from his father-in-law 8 years ago and spent most of his time in meetings about meetings, leaving the actual engineering to people like me. I sat in that chair, my chair, for another 45 minutes. Didn't work. Just stared at the factory floor through my window. 13 years of my life had been engineered into that space. My coffee-stained blueprints, my chair that tilted just right when I needed to think through a complex system integration, the worn spot on the carpet where I'd paced during overnight maintenance windows. And with one casual announcement, it was being reassigned to nepotism with a ring light. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I fight it? March into his office and throw my hard hat through his motivational poster collection. Because I'd been doing that metaphorically every day for over a decade. Quietly, professionally, effectively. Every time he made promises to clients without checking if we could deliver. Every time he cut maintenance budgets while demanding higher efficiency. Every time he took credit for my solutions in board meetings. And now I was done. Not angry, not even surprised. Just done. So I packed 3 things. My steel coffee mug with the dent from when it fell off the overhead crane during the 2019 expansion project. My leather-bound maintenance log with 13 years of handwritten system protocols, troubleshooting notes, and vendor contact information that existed nowhere else in the company. And a black thumb drive that looked innocent but contained the keys to everything that kept this place running. Custom scripts, database passwords, integration protocols, and backup procedures that I'd developed over more than a decade of late-night problem-solving. I left the rest. The dual monitors that I'd requisitioned and configured myself, the ergonomic keyboard I'd bought with my own money, the backup hard drives with all the legacy code documentation, even the industrial-grade surge protector that had saved our systems during 3 power outages. Let Jessica figure out which cable goes where. Right before I locked my office door for what Richard thought was a temporary transition, I took a photo. Not for memories. For evidence. The shot captured my organized workspace, the system diagrams taped to the wall, the binders of documentation I'd created when the company was too cheap to hire technical writers. Everything that made this place function, distilled into one corner office that they were about to redecorate with motivational posters and desk plants. I walked down the hallway past the break room where the second shift was grabbing coffee, past the quality control station where Maria always nodded hello, past the production floor where the machinery hummed steadily, following the maintenance schedules I'd optimized over years of watching, adjusting, and improving. None of them knew this was goodbye. Hell, I didn't even know it yet. I thought I was just taking a few days to cool off, maybe work from home until Richard came to his senses. I sent a brief note to Linda in HR from my truck in the parking lot. Transitioning to remote work temporarily while office reassignment occurs. Available via email as needed. Technically true. I hit send and watched that little check mark appear, then turned off my phone and drove home, not realizing I'd just sent my resignation letter without knowing it. That weekend, I sat on my deck with a beer and actually relaxed for the first time in months. No emergency calls about system failures, no texts about vendor issues, no Saturday morning emails from Richard asking if we could quickly reconfigure something that would take 3 weeks to do properly. It felt good. Too good. Like I'd been holding my breath for 13 years and finally remembered how to exhale. Monday was coming, and Jessica would be sitting in my chair, but for the first time in over a decade, that wasn't going to be my problem. I just didn't realize yet how much of their problem it was about to become. Monday morning rolled around, and I watched from my kitchen window as Jessica posted a boomerang on her Instagram story, her twirling in my chair with the caption "Big Girl Job Vibes." There was a ring light in the background, a ring light, in a manufacturing facility where the primary concern should be production efficiency, not lighting for social media content. I zoomed in on the video and noticed she'd already stuck some kind of Boss Babe decal over my system status board, the same board that displayed real-time production metrics and quality alerts that I checked first thing every morning. I wondered if she even knew what ISO 9001 compliance meant, or if she thought it was some kind of motivational hashtag. The emails started trickling in around 9:30 a.m., nothing dramatic at first. Just the usual, "Hey Matthew, do you know where the vendor maintenance schedule went?" And quick question about the backup protocols. Messages that normally got answered before they were even fully typed because I anticipated these needs. But I was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, watching the emails pile up like snow on a windshield. Each one a small problem that would grow into a bigger problem if not addressed. And for the first time in 13 years, I wasn't jumping up to fix them. I ignored them. Not out of spite, but because I genuinely no longer worked there. My body wasn't in the building, my access cards were probably deactivated by now, and my goodwill had evaporated the moment I saw Jessica's pink Stanley cup sitting on my desk where my coffee mug used to live. Around 11 a.m., something interesting happened. I got a call from Dave Martinez at Precision Components, one of our longtime suppliers. We'd worked together for 8 years, and he always dealt directly with me on technical specifications. "Matthew," he said, "I just got off a call with someone named Jessica at Midsteel. She wants to optimize our synergy and asked if we could provide our materials in more sustainable packaging colors. I told her our steel components don't come in colors, and she asked if we'd considered a rebrand. What the hell is going on over there?" I laughed. Actually laughed. "Dave, I'm not with Midsteel anymore, starting my own consulting firm. You need any systems work done?" There was a pause. "Wait, what? You're the only reason we kept that contract. Their systems guy who actually knows manufacturing specifications? You sure you're not coming back?" "Dead sure." "Well then, yeah. We've been having integration issues with our new ERP system. Nothing major, but you know how it is. Small problems become big ones if you don't catch them early. You interested?" I grabbed a pen. "Let's talk rates." While I was negotiating my first consulting contract over my morning coffee, Jessica was apparently trying to revolutionize Midsteel's vendor relationships through the power of positive thinking and color coordination. By noon, I had an email forwarded to me from a coworker. Jessica had sent out a company-wide message titled "Optimizing Our Operational Aesthetic," asking all departments to submit photos of their workspace energy for a vibe assessment. The production manager had replied with a photo of the factory floor and the message, "This is where we make steel. The vibe is industrial. The energy is mechanical. The aesthetic is functional." I was starting to understand that this wasn't temporary. This wasn't Richard testing Jessica's abilities or giving her a learning opportunity. This was him genuinely believing that what I did could be replaced by enthusiasm and social media savvy. Tuesday brought the first real problem. The weekly production summary, a detailed report I'd been generating every Tuesday for 8 years, didn't materialize. By 10:30 a.m., someone from finance had messaged Jessica, "Hey, do you know where the ops report is? Matthew usually sends it by now." Jessica's response, which got screenshotted and shared with me by a helpful colleague, was, "Totally on it, just putting some finishing touches on it to make it more visually appealing." The problem was, that report didn't exist in any shareable format. It was generated by pulling data from 12 different systems, cross-referencing it with maintenance schedules and vendor deliveries, then formatting it into a readable summary that highlighted potential issues before they became actual problems. It took me about 2 hours every Tuesday morning, and I'd been doing it for so long that I could spot anomalies in the data that would take someone else weeks to identify. By Thursday, I'd gotten 3 more vendor calls. Word was spreading through our supplier network that something was wrong at Midsteel. These were guys I'd worked with for years, people who knew their business depended on accurate technical specifications and timely communications. When they couldn't get straight answers from Jessica about delivery schedules or quality requirements, they started calling me directly. I set up a simple LLC registration online, Davidson Engineering Solutions. The name felt right. Professional, but personal. My grandfather would have approved. By the end of that first week, I had inquiries from 4 different companies. 2 were existing Midsteel vendors who wanted someone reliable to handle their technical coordination. 1 was a competitor who'd heard through the grapevine that Midsteel's senior systems guy was available. The 4th was a small manufacturing startup that needed someone to help them set up their quality management systems from scratch. I priced everything at consulting rates, $150 per hour for basic troubleshooting, $200 for systems design, $250 for crisis intervention. Rates that reflected 13 years of expertise and the value of not having to deal with corporate politics or family drama. Meanwhile, at Midsteel, the first real crisis was brewing. The automated quality control system had flagged a batch of components that didn't meet specifications. Normally, I would have investigated the sensor calibration, checked the measurement protocols, and either adjusted the system parameters or flagged legitimate quality issues for the production team. Instead, Jessica had approved the shipment because the numbers looked close enough and we don't want to hurt our delivery metrics with perfectionism. The client rejected the entire shipment, $47,000 worth of steel components that would have to be reprocessed or scrapped. That's when Richard finally called me. His name appeared on my phone like a warning light I'd learned to ignore. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. "Matthew," he said, and his voice had lost that executive confidence. "We had a small quality issue today. Nothing major, but Jessica's still learning the systems. Could you maybe walk her through the QC protocols real quick?" I was sitting on my deck with a beer, watching the sunset, feeling more relaxed than I had in years. "I'm not available," I said, calm as a thermostat. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. Then, "What do you mean not available? It's just a quick call." "I mean, I don't work there anymore, Richard, but I do offer consulting services if you need technical assistance." Another long pause. I could practically hear him processing the implications. "Consulting? What's your rate?" I smiled at the sky. $250 an hour, 4-hour minimum. He hung up without another word. I finished my beer and went inside to work on my business plan. Things were about to get interesting. The real collapse started in week 3, and it wasn't dramatic like you see in movies. It was more like watching a building settle. Small cracks appearing, then widening, then suddenly you realize the whole foundation is shifting. It began with Automotive Solutions Group, our biggest client. They'd been with Midsteel for 6 years, and I'd personally managed their quality compliance requirements from day one. Every month, I submitted their ISO documentation, verified their calibration reports, and handled the technical specifications for their custom steel components. On a Wednesday morning, I got a call from Tom Wilson, their procurement manager. "Matthew, I just got off the phone with someone at Midsteel who couldn't answer basic questions about our quality protocols. She kept talking about optimizing our partnership experience and asked if we'd be interested in featuring our collaboration on their LinkedIn page. I need to know, are you still handling our account?" I was sitting in my home office, which I'd set up in what used to be my spare bedroom. Clean desk, good lighting, my coffee mug within reach. Everything Midsteel had never bothered to provide. "No, Tom, I left the company. But I'm consulting now if you need technical support." "Left? Matthew, you are our technical support. Without you, we're basically working with a sales team that doesn't understand the difference between 3on16 and 304 stainless steel." 3 days later, Automotive Solutions Group suspended their contract pending vendor compliance review. In manufacturer speak, that meant they were looking for a new supplier. Meanwhile, Jessica was posting daily updates about her operations journey on social media. Her latest LinkedIn post featured a photo of herself pointing at a spreadsheet with the caption, when you're optimizing synergies and the numbers just click. #manufacturing. Life, #girlboss, #datavibes. The spreadsheet was a delivery schedule that showed 3 shipments marked as on time when I knew for a fact they were all running 4 to 6 days late. I knew because the vendors were calling me directly to ask about the delays. That's when I realized Jessica wasn't just incompetent. She was creating her own version of reality and posting it online as if it were actually happening. By the end of the month, I had 5 active consulting contracts. Precision Components hired me to redesign their quality management system. A startup called Apex Manufacturing brought me in to set up their entire operations infrastructure. 2 other companies wanted me for crisis management, cleaning up messes that sounded remarkably similar to what was happening at Mid-Steel. The money was better than I'd expected. My first month's invoicing came to $18,000. My second month hit $23,000. I was working fewer hours, dealing with rational people who valued technical expertise, and sleeping better than I had in years. Meanwhile, Richard was learning what happens when you replace institutional knowledge with social media enthusiasm. The compliance audit hit in month 2. Every year, Mid-Steel underwent a quality systems review to maintain their ISO certification, the certification that allowed them to bid on major manufacturing contracts. For 8 years, I'd prepared for these audits like I was defending a doctoral thesis, because in many ways, I was. The auditor would spend 3 days reviewing our processes, documentation, and procedures, looking for gaps or inconsistencies that could cost us our certification. I'd always pass these audits because I understood something that Richard never grasped. Manufacturing isn't about looking good on paper. It's about having systems that work, documentation that's accurate, and people who understand the difference between compliance and performance. Jessica approached the audit like it was a presentation. She prepared a PowerPoint deck titled Mid-Steel's Excellence Journey, with slides about embracing quality culture and leveraging continuous improvement mindsets. She printed glossy folders with the company logo and motivational quotes about teamwork. The auditor, a gruff 60-year-old engineer named Frank Kowalski who'd been reviewing manufacturing facilities since before Jessica was born, asked to see the calibration records for their measurement equipment. Jessica handed him a folder of printouts from their equipment management software, raw data dumps that showed calibration dates but no analysis of measurement uncertainty, no trending of equipment drift, no documentation of corrective actions when calibrations failed. "Where's your measurement systems?" "Analysis?" Frank asked. "Our what?" "Your MSA? Gauge R&R studies. Statistical verification that your measurement systems are capable of detecting the variations you're trying to control." Jessica stared at him like he'd asked her to explain quantum physics, because I'd never written down how I calculated measurement uncertainty or documented my monthly equipment evaluations. That knowledge lived in my head and in handwritten notes that were now sitting in my home office. The audit lasted 3 days and resulted in 14 nonconformities, technical violations of ISO requirements that had to be corrected within 30 days or Mid-Steel would lose their certification. Richard called me that Friday evening. This time, his voice was different. Not angry, not demanding. Tired. "Matthew, we need to talk. In person." "I'm available for on-site consulting," I said. "My rate is $300 an hour with a 4-hour minimum, plus travel time." "Jesus Christ, Matthew. This is serious. We could lose our ISO certification. You know what that means." I did know. Without ISO certification, Mid-Steel couldn't bid on automotive contracts, aerospace work, or any of the high-margin projects that kept them profitable. They'd be relegated to basic fabrication work with razor-thin margins and constant competition. "Like I said, I'm available for consulting. I can have a proposal to you Monday morning." He was quiet for a long time. "You're really not coming back." "No, Richard, I'm not." "What do you want? More money? Better title? Your old office back?" I was sitting on my deck again, watching the sun set over trees instead of factory buildings. My consulting business was growing steadily, my stress levels were lower than they'd been in years, and I was working with people who valued expertise over politics. "I don't want anything from Mid-Steel," I told him, "but if you want something from me, we can discuss it at consulting rates." He hung up without saying goodbye. Monday morning, I sent him a proposal for emergency ISO compliance recovery services, fixed price contract, $75,000 to identify and correct all audit nonconformities, train replacement personnel, and establish sustainable quality management procedures. It was more money than I'd made in any single year at Midsteel, for 6 weeks of work. Tuesday afternoon, Richard called back. "We'll take it," he said, just like that. No negotiation, no pushback, no questions about scope or timeline. Just the desperate acceptance of a man who'd finally realized that some problems can't be solved with enthusiasm and motivational posters. I smiled and opened my calendar. "When would you like me to start?" The ISO recovery project took 6 weeks, and it was the most satisfying work I'd done in years. Not because I was helping Midsteel. By that point, I honestly didn't care if they sank or swam. It was satisfying because I was finally being paid what my expertise was worth, working on my own terms and watching Richard realize exactly what he'd thrown away when he handed my office to his daughter. I worked on site 3 days a week, and the difference in how people treated me was remarkable. Now I was Mr. Davidson, the consultant who was there to fix their problems. The same engineers who used to grab me in the hallway for quick favors were now scheduling formal meetings and coming prepared with detailed questions. When I gave recommendations, they got implemented immediately instead of being taken under consideration by management. Jessica tried to shadow me during the first week, taking notes and asking if she could absorb some of my optimization techniques. But when I started explaining measurement uncertainty calculations and gauge repeatability studies, her eyes glazed over like I was speaking a foreign language. By week 2, she'd found other projects to focus on. The audit follow-up inspection happened in week 4. Frank Kowalski, the same auditor who'd found 14 non-conformities, came back to verify our corrections. This time, when he asked for calibration documentation, I handed him a completely reorganized system with statistical trending, predictive maintenance schedules, and measurement uncertainty calculations that met industry best practices. "Much better," he said, reviewing the documentation. "This is what I expected to see the first time." "Who set this up?" "Matthew Davidson," Richard said, standing behind us. "Our consultant." "You should hire him permanently," Frank replied. "This is professional-grade quality management." I caught Richard's expression out of the corner of my eye. For just a moment, he looked like a man who'd sold his car and then realized he still needed to drive to work. Midsteel passed the follow-up audit with 0 nonconformities. My $75,000 invoice got paid within 24 hours. By that point, Davidson Engineering Solutions had grown to 8 regular clients. I'd hired my first subcontractor, Maria Santos, a quality engineer who'd been laid off from a factory closure and jumped at the chance to work with someone who understood manufacturing systems. Together, we were generating more monthly revenue than I'd made in any year at Midsteel. The real vindication came 6 months later when I got a call from Tom Wilson at Automotive Solutions Group. "Matthew, I have a question for you. We're looking for a new primary supplier for our steel components. Someone reliable, with proven quality systems and technical expertise we can count on. You know anyone?" I smiled, looking out the window of my new office space, a small but professional suite in an industrial park, with my name on the door and no one to answer to but my clients. "Actually, Tom, I might have a recommendation. There's a small shop called Precision Manufacturing that's been working with some of my other clients. Their quality systems are outstanding, and their lead engineer is someone I trained personally. Want me to set up an introduction? Sounds perfect. And Matthew, thanks for not recommending Midsteel. We tried to work with them after you left, but it was a disaster. That girl Jessica kept asking if we wanted to collaborate on some LinkedIn content instead of answering technical questions." 3 months later, I learned through the manufacturing grapevine that Midsteel had lost 3 more major clients. Their revenue was down 40%, and they'd laid off 18 people, including most of the engineering team that had actually kept the place running. The corner office that used to be mine sat empty. Apparently, no one wanted to work in the space where everything had gone wrong. Jessica's LinkedIn profile now listed her as exploring opportunities in digital marketing and brand strategy. Her last post about manufacturing had been 4 months earlier. A photo of herself wearing safety glasses and a hard hat with the caption, "Sometimes you have to pivot and find your true calling." New beginnings. Personal growth/authenticity. The hard hat was backwards. Richard tried to call me twice more over the following year. Once to ask if I'd consider coming back as director of operations with a 30% raise. Once to ask if I knew any senior engineers who might be interested in a ground floor opportunity to rebuild a classic American manufacturing company. I didn't return either call. Last month, I got an email from a headhunter asking if I'd be interested in consulting for a distressed manufacturing company that needs operational restructuring. The company name in the email was Mid-Steel Manufacturing. I deleted it without replying. Davidson Engineering Solutions now has 12 clients, 3 full-time employees, and a waiting list for new projects. We're booked 8 weeks out, and I'm turning down work because we can't handle the volume. My annual revenue last year was $340,000, more than I'd made in my entire 13 years at Mid-Steel combined. But the money isn't even the best part. The best part is working with people who understand that manufacturing is about precision, reliability, and technical expertise. People who value institutional knowledge and pay for competence. People who wouldn't dream of replacing their senior engineer with a social media marketing graduate just because she's related to the boss. I'm 49 now, and I've never been more sure of something. The quiet ones don't get credit while they're holding everything together. But when they stop and everything falls apart, people remember real quick what they were worth. I'm Matthew Davidson. I spent 13 years keeping someone else's company running, and when they gave my office away, I took everything that mattered, my knowledge, my relationships, and my self-respect, and built something better. Something that can't be given away to the boss's daughter because it belongs to me. And some days when I'm working with a client who appreciates technical expertise and pays me what I'm worth, I remember that feeling I had on Richard's last phone call. Not anger, not satisfaction, just the quiet confidence that comes from knowing exactly what you're capable of when nobody's holding you back. That's the best revenge of all. Building something so much better than what you left behind that you forget why you were angry in the first place.